It's good to see you all this morning. I feel you in my heart. And I would like to thank Nancy for choosing that wonderful song, Be Still and Know That I Am God. I think that's the homily right there. That's what I wanted to end this talk with. And you've done it for me with that song. Be still and know that I am God. Of course, the question arises, who is saying that? Is that God Almighty sitting on a cloud with a long white beard saying, you be still and know that I am God, like the wrathful parent? Or is that Jesus saying, be still and know that I am God? Or is that something each of us can say to ourselves? Like, tell your mind, be still and know that I am God. But who is the I? That's the question. Now, my friend Ramdas, who turned a lot of young people onto Eastern mysticism, most people don't know he had a brother who was in a mental institution. And Ramdas went to visit him one day. The reason he was committed was because he thought he was Jesus. And his brother said to Ramdas when he visited him, I don't understand how you tell people that you're a Christ, and you tell people you're Christ, and when I say I'm, and they worship you, and when I say I'm Christ, they put me in a mental institution. And Ramdas said, well, there's a slight difference. You say you are the Christ, and I say I am a Christ. And that is why. So I think that is what Jesus was trying to say, was trying to teach, that God, the Father, is in all of us, and not just the Father, but the Mother. The church has kind of left the Mother out there a bit, but we can reclaim that God is both Father and Mother. And when you say I, who is that? When you are saying I am, you are tuning into the Father, Mother, God. It's like I always wondered, how can God hear everyone's prayers around the earth? In fact, not only on this earth, but on other planets. That is that just one being that is able to hear everybody? And the answer to that is that we each have our own God presence, which Jesus called the Father. We can call Father, Mother, God. And that is the reason why I have this artwork on the wall behind me. This is a picture of the I am. It's called the I am presence. And I think this is where I left off last week, talking about my meeting with Pearl, to whom I was sent by the Master Saint Germain, who materialized in front of me in Muir Woods. And she said, you have this I am God presence that resides about 50 to 60 feet above you. And that is above everyone. And that is how God hears your every thought, word, and feeling and aspiration. And that God presence knows the divine plan for your life. So it's not my God versus your God. Think of it like the fingers of your hand. This finger is Peter, but this finger is Peter also. They don't argue over which is Peter. they're meeting now and they go, oh, the God in the Peter in me sees the Peter in you. Well, imagine that we are all fingers of God. And if you turn your attention inward, you will experience the God presence within you. You will experience the essence of yourself, because your essence is God. You are not all of God, but your essence is God. It's like the beads on the rosary. If one bead said, I'm the rosary, the other beads would get offended. The same string runs, the same chain runs through all the beads, and that is God consciousness running through all of them. So each of us is truly an embodiment of God. Just like Sean says, we are all priests. And Jesus said, know you not, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So we can, each of us, tune in to that essence that runs through all of us. It's the same essence that runs through the heart of Jesus, through the heart of Mary, through all the great saints, through Elijah, Moses. Every enlightened being that has ever been has that same God consciousness within. And that is what really sets us free and helps us achieve salvation. And I'll explain a little more about this presence. There's basically a ball of light at the top, surrounded by rainbow colors. And that ball of light sends a spark down, or a tube of light. In esoteric literature, they call it the silver cord. And that cord is anchored in our hearts, not actually in the physical heart, slightly to the right, under the sternum. Now, in India, they call that the Jyoti. That's the sacred flame. And you can feel it when you tap there. It's very sensitive. One of my teachers, Trungpa Rinpoche, called it the soft spot. It's the place we try to protect. It's where we feel most vulnerable, because that's where our God flame is anchored. I think of it, it's like the pilot light on a stove. You don't see it, like on the old gas stoves. You don't see the pilot light, but it's there all the time. And it lights up all the other burners. Well, you can think of the other burners like your chakras. But when you turn that stove on, the pilot light goes into action and lights up. So you could say, when we feel enlightened, when we get excited, when we feel the presence of God, all our burners are lighting up. And this is sort of what happens at the ascension. Those burners are going full blast, and it just dissolves the physical body entirely. So that God presence sends the tube of light down, and there's actually an intermediary body, and it goes down through that, and it's anchored here in the physical body. Now, halfway between the physical body and the God presence is what is called the Christ self. So the Christ self is fully aware of God, the Father, Mother, God, which is absolute consciousness, Satchidananda, consciousness, existence, bliss, and completely free of all egotism. And the Christ self is aware of that Father, Mother, God, but it's also aware of the human self. So it is, and that Christ self is in a sense using the physical self and our lifetime in this world of duality as a sort of laboratory to experiment. That's where the free will comes in. We have had free will to experiment with the light, to experiment with our ability to create. And so we are learning the consequences of our actions. And sometimes those consequences are not pleasant. And we think, well, I made a mistake, but God forgives us. You can go to confession and have the priest tell you you're forgiven, or you can ask God within you, forgive me, Father and Mother, for I have sinned, and I ask for forgiveness, and please heal this situation, heal anyone I have hurt. As Sean said again, we are all priests, so we all have this ability to forgive each other and to forgive ourselves, especially. So that song that Nancy sang, Be Still and Know That I Am God, we can all practice that inwardly. And what we need to do is tell the mind to be still. Because it's the mind that gets in there and says, no, I'm not God. If I were God, I could just precipitate everything I want and I would be totally happy. So how could I be God? That's the mind going, and it jumps in the way all the time. And some people say, well, I call on God, I want to experience God, and nothing happens. Well, maybe the first step is to turn your cell phone off. The big key is what your attention is on is what you become. So if your attention is on things of the world, you are immersed in the things of the world. If you go to sleep with your cell phone by your bed, and in the morning, the first thing you do is turn on your cell phone to get your messages, immediately your mind leaps into action. Mind, which is merged with ego. I have to do this today. Oh, so-and-so made me angry yesterday. I've got to deal with that. And then your mind takes over for the rest of the day. Or if you don't turn on the cell phone, maybe you turn on the news and see what the latest catastrophe is. Then all day long, your mind is worrying about what you saw on the news. How do you expect to feel God when the mind is so active, mind, ego? So that's why people take the time out to meditate, is to shut out the things of the world and really tune into God. And I hope to be able today to share a few little methods with you, which is really, I would feel good if I could end these talks having given you some little treasure or method that would help you in your daily life. And it's really not that difficult. The theory is quite simple. It's, of course, applying it is difficult, like this member of Companions on a Journey who had to lie on his back and watch a spot on the ceiling all day. That's actually a very advanced meditation technique. It's focusing the mind. Of course, the mind tends to wander, but if you could bring your mind to focus on that one spot, that would be a big step toward enlightenment. It's not that spot holds the answer, but it stills the mind, and then the God presence can come through into the stillness and give you the answers that you're looking for and speak to you directly, heart to heart, because God is truly in our hearts. So I mentioned last time, one way to still the mind is through just observing the breath. And it's very interesting. A few days ago, I turned on CNN and there was a story of, I think it was Larry King, saying he took a meditation class from a meditation teacher and was told to focus on the breath. And you'll find even just 10 in-breaths and out-breaths will still the mind. You know, when I was a kid, they used to say, if you get angry at someone, count to 10 before you reply. Well, I would say observe 10 in-breaths before you reply. And during those 10 in-breaths and out-breaths, get still, let the mind calm down, and feel who you really are. Feel the presence of your Father, Mother, God within you. And think, what is it I really want to say? Am I going to react from my ego mind, or am I going to act from my God presence? And the more you practice these methods, the closer your God presence comes to you. And if you were to totally merge with the God presence, that is what's called the ascension. And you have that beautiful story that was read last week in the scripture lesson when Jesus took 3 of his disciples up on the mountain, and he was transfigured, and Moses and Elijah came down out of a cloud, and then they dematerialized back up into the cloud, and they went, what on earth is going on here? And they didn't say exactly that, but Jesus said, look, hush, just don't tell anyone what you experienced. First, I'm going unto the Father, then you can talk about this later. Well, there are a number of beings who have achieved that. Even, it seems, Elijah, hundreds of years before Jesus ascended. And I knew a teacher from China who was there when his teacher ascended. He saw multiple flashes of different colored light, and the being was no longer there. So as you meditate, don't worry, this won't happen spontaneously, so don't be afraid to meditate. At most, you will feel joy and happiness and peace and tranquility, and gradually you feel more and more love the closer the God presence comes to you. So as you observe the in-breath and the out-breath, you label thoughts. Just say, that was a thought. That was a thought. Come back to the breath. Then in that stillness, you are able to observe yourself. Now, certain things may come up that are troubling, and you can actually observe those thoughts and find out where they came from. So once you become still in the practice of Vipassana, you practice what is called self-inquiry. So you're really asking, who am I? Who is the I that says, I am God? So that's a whole path of meditation called self-inquiry, where you meditate on who am I? I would say, rather than who am I, what am I, or what is observing my thoughts? So the thoughts are going through one part of your mind, maybe the frontal part, but there is another part that is observing the thoughts. Who is that observer? So I would call the observer beyond the ego. It can observe the ego, however. And I think almost everyone has experienced that while you're getting angry at someone, there's a part of you saying, uh-oh, I'm really losing it, but the words keep coming anyway. So then later you have to go back and apologize, but you think, why didn't I just slow down a little bit? If I'd been observing myself earlier in the conversation, I would not have gotten angry. So learning to identify with the observer is what this is about. So again, thinking, who am I? Or meditating just on I, that's like a shaft, that takes you to the shaft of light that goes right up to your I am presence. And then later you can say I am, that brings in the creative mother aspect that brings things into manifestation. So you can actually say, I am good. I feel the presence of the living Christ within me. I may have done bad things, I may have been unconscious, but my basic essence is goodness. And meditate on that. I am a good person. The heart of the baby, which you were at 2 months old, is still in you. That is still your heart. When you look at a baby, you feel their basic goodness. And you are still that being you were when you were 2 months old. That basic goodness is still in you. And you can love that self and know that that is the presence of God within you. Now, there's a problem that people run into, that if some people practice intensive meditation, what's called Advaita, which is meditating on the oneness, they forget about everybody else. And I've seen some of these people in Mount Shasta and other places who say, I achieved oneness and the heck with everybody else. Like, you can achieve oneness too. Well, that kind of is a little bit missing the point, because we are in duality, we are in the world, and there are other people. They too are embodiments of God, but where mastery lies is in learning to simultaneously be in the oneness, God consciousness, but also be aware of others and relate consciously with others. So this is where the practice, and this is where I think our real lesson is in learning compassion. And, if there's nobody else, there's no one to be compassionate to. So the fact that you encounter someone else and they push your buttons, or you feel sad or sorry, whatever, you feel some regret, just feel that person is also a part of you. Those homeless people in the street are a part of you, the same Christ presence, the same I am presence, or at least they have their own I am presence, but it is one with your I am presence. You can feel compassion for their suffering. So there's another practice I would like to share with you, which is actually goes under the title of Tantra. And I'm not talking here about sexual Tantra. The word Tantra means oneness, or it means the unbroken thread, that everything in our life is connected. Everything has life. So even brushing your teeth could be a tantric practice. If you say, I am brushing the teeth of Jesus, I am one with the Christ. Everything you do during the day can be a sacrament. We're going to practice the sacrament a little later, where you consciously take the wine and the bread or the wafer and say, this is the blood and the body of Christ. But you can also say, my whole body is one with the Christ, or is a manifestation of the Christ. So in honoring and treating myself well and taking care of my teeth and of my health, I am honoring Jesus the Christ. I am honoring the Christ which is in everyone. So, like I said, Tantra means the unbroken thread of consciousness which is in all of us. And this is what these monks did on Mount Athos that I met. Their whole prayer was to visualize themselves as Jesus with the Sacred Heart, and say, the heart of Christ, may the heart of Jesus be everywhere known. So everyone they would see on the road, they would see that person has the heart of Jesus. And the heart of Jesus is within me and within you and with everyone. And these beings were absolutely blissful beings. I felt they had achieved even more than enlightenment, they had achieved compassion. And I'm going to say that I think many people, when they recite the rosary, if you are looking at Mother Mary, either a picture of her or a statue, some people actually merge with Mary and feel her presence within them. That is Tantra, where you feel the oneness, that there is no separation. And that is a very ancient practice that is practiced in India and in Tibet, where you visualize a particular aspect of God in front of you, and you make that being more and more real. Like in your, I'll use the word imagination, that you imagine the being is right there in front of you. And you can say an invocation also, like, beloved Mother Mary, please come to me and manifest before me so I can experience oneness with you. And you imagine she is there in front of you. Now, Annika bought a statue online of Mother Mary we have sitting outside. And at first I thought, oh, another statue of Mary. But every day she goes and puts flowers at Mary's feet and a garland and, washes her occasionally like it's the living being. So after a while, now when I go out there, I feel that's really Mary out there. And I get a blessing sitting in front of her. So this is a tantric practice, which many of you probably doing and don't even know it. But you can make it more and more real by actually imagining, first seeing Mary in front of you, then closing your eyes and imagining her merging with you and saying, may Mary's heart and my heart be one. And as you feel that, then you can say, I am the Divine Mother. I am the Holy Mother, full of grace, forgiving everyone. I am the Holy Mother, full of grace, forgiving everyone. And feel that blessing go out. So you are not claiming to be Mary. You are claiming to be a Mary, a mother, a divine mother. So we are all embodiments of that divine Father, divine Mother, and we can call forth the Father if we want. We can call forth the Mother aspect. When we call forth the living Christ, that is a merging of both the Divine Mother and the Divine Father. Your I Am presence contains both in perfect union. Now, originally, the cross was not like a crucifix. The crucifix is an instrument of execution. The sacred symbol of the cross, the horizontal bar, was the same length, or is the same length as the vertical bar. So the vertical bar is the I, the Father, the will aspect, and the horizontal bar is the Mother, the Am, the love and the nurturing that brings things into manifestation. So when you say, I am, that is Father, Mother, God in action. So you actually existed even before the I am in the great oneness, in the great sea of consciousness, or in the consciousness of your God presence. There is no duality. There is just light and consciousness and bliss. But as that comes forth into duality, as you decide to express as an individual, in other words, before you took on this spacesuit, what Sean calls it, the spacesuit, you were that unlimited being, and there was not male, female, up, down, left, right, good, bad. We decided to muck around down here and experience duality. So in order to do that, you had to say, I am. I am here now in the world of duality, and I am learning the consequences of my actions, and I am working on being a better being, more compassionate, more loving, and more filled with God consciousness. And then it's important at the end of this meditation to dissolve your union with your visualization. Otherwise, there are a number of people that go around, like Ram Dass's brother, who started thinking he was Jesus. He experienced Jesus within him, and he thought that must be who he was. I know someone that played Archangel Michael in a play, and he felt Archangel Michael come through him, and he went around for a few days thinking he was the reincarnation of Archangel Michael, telling everybody that, you know. In one summer in Mount Shasta, I had 3 women come up to me and say, in all confidence, I have to tell you that I am the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene. Because they had an experience of Mary Magdalene that was so real, they felt her within them, but they didn't let go of it. They just held on to the thought that that is who they are. So they had received a blessing from Mary Magdalene, but then they didn't learn to let go of it and realize I am also myself. Myself is a God presence too. So there may be many high beings in mental institutions who feel that they are Jesus or Mary, one of the Marys. In fact, there was a psychiatrist who wrote a book. He had three patients in 3 different mental institutions, I believe in Michigan, and they all thought that they were Jesus. So he had the idea, what if I bring them all together in one mental institution, and they all have to share a room together? They will realize that they could not all 3 of them be Jesus. So he did this, and a month later he came back, and they had worked it out. So one was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So that way they could still be these great beings, you know. The name of the book is The 3 Christs of Ypsilanti. So that's why it's important at the end to let go of the tantric visualization. You can visualize yourself as a Mary or as a Jesus for the sake of the meditation, but then you have to dissolve that and let it go and realize that same presence is in everyone.
You made the interesting remark that you've seen lots of practices, but in your experience, you try and get them simpler and simpler. You've talked about the importance of sort of visualization and finding the thread today. How do those fit with your core, keep it simple meditation practice?
Yeah, well, I do this vipassana, observing the breath. And then I've sort of trained myself, so at some point I don't really need to do that too much longer. I go right into a space where of sort of no thought. Well, it's not, I can't say totally no thought. A thought will come up after a while, and I look at it. And I can sort of observe it. Now, early on, what happens is we identify with the thought. And we think, I am the thought, and the thought causes fear or anger, something like that. But through identifying more with the higher self, I'm able to observe the thought outside of me. and sort of take action, not outside of me, but as separate from me. And I also do other practices, like, for example, white Tara, which is very much like visualizing the Divine Mother. I shied away from the more Catholic practices just because the way I grew up, it wasn't in my world so much. So I've spent a lot of time in India and in Tibet. And so I don't have all the associations. They're sort of free of association. So white Tara has a mantra. So again, like you say the rosary, or you can say an I am affirmation. I use it. Once I get into a state where I'm feeling, I won't say oneness with the I am presence, but very connected with God, the Father, Mother, Self, then I can say an affirmation like, I feel good, or I am good, or I am organizing my day according to the divine plan. And I also tune in to feel, what is that plan? Maybe I get an image of something. And that is maybe what I would talk about in the next homily, is how to get guidance. That's a whole different subject. That God is very practical. God would like to make life easier for us. But God says, you want to do it on your own? Fine. You do it your way. I'll be here for you if you get in trouble. But we can learn to do it God's way also, which comes through the concept of surrender, which is a whole other concept that a lot of Americans say, surrender, why should I surrender? Or why should I bow to anybody? Why should I genuflect? When I went to India, I saw people prostrating, or in Tibet, just prostrating full out on the ground with their face on the ground and their arms outstretched. And I thought, how could they do that? Well, then I actually tried it, and it felt wonderful. It's like acknowledging something, that there is something greater than myself. In fact, I get a little bit off the subject here, Lawrence, but I saw some people in India taking coconuts, smashing them at the feet of this huge statue of a deity. And I thought, we're in a country where people are hungry. Well, how are you wasting this food, smashing these coconuts? And they said, oh, the coconut is my ego. And when I offer it, my ego, to God, and then I smash the coconut on the ground at the feet of the deity. And I went, whoa, I'm going to try that. So I went out, I bought a coconut, and I did that. And I have to say that was a turning point in my life, saying, I realize it's my ego that's been causing all these problems. I surrender my ego to God, and then smashing it on the ground, then you turn and walk away. And I think that's what we're supposed to do when you enter a cathedral and you genuflect. You're saying, I of myself am nothing without you, Lord. I do many different practices, Lawrence, depending on the situation. I do some Sanskrit chanting. I also say prayers. I pray for humanity. But the core practice is to still the mind. And the best time for that is like 4 o'clock in the morning. It's what they call in India the Brahma Muhurta, the hour of God. People are not up yet. People aren't thinking. And you can be in the stillness and really tune into your essence at that time. So I do that. I pretty much get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do this. And then I may go back to sleep, or then I do affirmations and I do prayers for humanity. I pray for the world governments, so on.
Well, since you're going to be talking in the future, what I was going to kind of run by you is, when we pray, we're talking to God, but when we meditate, God is talking to us. So I will you're going to be talking about that later. So I also wanted to say that I worked with some shamans from the Huichol tribe in Mexico, and I was amazed to hear that their whole religion is life. When they do artwork, that's praying. When they cook their meals, that's praying. Or they are their religion. There's no separation between, what they're doing and they don't walk into church and that's where they practice their religion. They practice their religion 24 hours a day.
Thank you for sharing that, Johanna. I knew a lady in Mount Shasta who was half Huichol Indian, and she lived with her mother, who was not Huichol. And when her mother got to be too much for her, she'd go up and live with her aunt in the mountains with the Huichol tribe. And they said everything is alive. So treat everything as having consciousness. So you treat it with respect, and of course, naturally treating each other with respect, that God is everywhere and in everything. In fact, they said, when you leave home in the morning, just stop for a moment and bless the 4 directions. So I tried that one morning. I went outside. I don't know what my neighbors thought, but I said, I bless the spirit of the north, and then I turned to the east. I bless the spirit of the east and the south and the west and so on. And I turned and I held my hands up and I said, I bless you. And then I let go of that. Later in the day, I was driving north on the freeway, and suddenly this energy hit me from all sides, from 4 directions. And I got a tremendous blessing all of a sudden out of nowhere. I was driving, I wasn't praying. And I said, what is that? And they said, that is your prayer come back to you. It had gone completely around the earth and come back, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So that showed me the power of prayer. Just saying, I bless you, what that is doing. Even you hold up a picture of somebody, you look at a picture and say, I bless you. Like right now, we can say, I bless Stefan's mother in Germany. And boom, that prayer has gone out, That's the beauty of this group, Companions on the Journey, the power of prayer. And thank you, Joanna, for saying that those Huichol Indians were, they have those teachings. It's in their tradition,
Thank you for sharing all of your experiences and your wisdom.
My pleasure.
I'm curious about your relationship with Saint Germain.
For those of you who don't know him, here's a picture of Saint Germain. That's how he appears in his etheric body. He appears differently, different times. Like I say, I've had several experiences where he has materialized physically. But I regard him as sort of an older brother, And he has these great beings. People think that they're very serious and, we should be in awe of them, but they have an amazing sense of humor. My experiences with Saint Germain, he's really quite a joker. I've talked about these experiences in my books. I have an autobiography, Apprentice to the Masters, and I share some experiences with him there. But I know, well, like some of you, each of you have your own favorite being to tune into, but he has been my teacher for a number of years. From the time he materialized in front of me in Muir Woods and led me to Pearl, I feel him quite often, but he doesn't give me the answers to things like I would like all the time. He lets me get the experience and figure it out myself, because you don't become a master by sitting at the feet of a master. You become a master by being in action and calling forth your own intuition, your own love, wisdom, and power. So I don't know if that's helped, Michael, but.
Yeah. Thank you. So if I want to learn more about your experiences with Saint Germain, I'm very interested, and I agree with you about walking our own path, is to read Apprentice with the Master.
It's volume 2. The 2-volume set is Adventures of a Western Mystic, and the second one is Apprentice to the Masters. You know, I thought Saint Germain was going to lead me up on the mountain and help me ascend. Instead, he said, get into real estate. I said, real estate? I don't want to do that. But so I did actually get into real estate for a number of years. And see, it's in daily life where you learn the lessons of mastery. Also, relationship is another place. People think, I like to get out of relationship and go be a monk in the cave in the mountains. Well, you can learn some things doing that. But if you really want to be a master, learn to bring the equanimity and the peace from the cave into the relationship, you know?
Yes, I think that's wonderful advice.
Into the boardroom.
I've done that. We've had some decisions with the board at times, and I've asked them, what's the most loving and compassionate decision here? And, you know, that's an unusual question for a board.
How do they respond to that?
They paused and thought about the issue from a different perspective. And so I think it's important to look at, you know, the situation from a lot of different points of view. And I was happy that they did that.
You know, there's a Tibetan Lama I studied with for a while, and he was invited to talk to the board of directors of Goldman Sachs. And he went in there, and I don't know how long he talked, but some of his followers criticized him. And they said, you talked to the giant squid? That's what the nickname for Goldman Sachs, that, you know, they regarded Goldman Sachs as the source of a lot of our economic problems or something. And he said, they're the ones that need it. Like this scripture lesson, Jesus hung out with the publicans and the sinners because they're the ones that needed it. If you're healthy, you don't need a doctor, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I'm very, one of my favorite things to worry about is the future of the planet. And there are more and more people on spiritual paths and so forth, and there are various pearls of wisdom from these teachers, but they don't seem to have any real idea of what to do with the ecological breakdown of the planet and the strife and so forth and so on.
Okay, well, something from the scripture came to mind. When Mary Magdalene washed the feet of Jesus with this expensive oil, the disciples criticized her, and they said, this is really expensive oil you used on his feet. The money for this could have gone to feed the poor. And he said, the poor you will always have with you. You will not have me with you for long. She has done something very beautiful for me. Can you leave her alone? So what I think is, you take pollution. You are going to have pollution with you. We can ameliorate it, but you are only in a body for so long. And you have the opportunity to realize Christ within yourself at this time. If you lose the opportunity to realize Christ because all your attention is on pollution, what a great loss. You know what I mean? You're not going to solve the problem of pollution by yourself, even if 10% of humanity is concerned with this. we're still going to have some pollution. It's just the nature of life in this world, you know? So why not find what's the most important thing to you? You know, I'm not saying pollution is not important. I think about this myself, but, you know, in fact, last night when I was taking a bath and I pulled the plug, I thought, what a waste of this water. There's something called, this is what's called gray water. I live in a semi-desert. That water could have gone out and irrigated my front yard. And instead, it's just down the drain. It's a waste of pure water. Why couldn't I organize something in this community in which I live where the gray water is used to water the lawns instead of using up all this fresh, pure water that's melted glacier water from Mount Shasta? So I think about these things too, Chris. But the question is, what if I had done that instead of giving this talk this morning? You know, this seemed to be at the top of the list. So, you know, I suggest you find what the most important thing is for you. It doesn't mean stop doing everything else, but we all have a tremendous opportunity at this moment. And there are many, many things we could worry about and become obsessed with. You know, I have friends that are practically beside themselves with anxiety and worry and anger. And I feel like saying, come on, we have this opportunity right now to find God within ourselves. You know, that makes it, you can still engage in ecological action, but do it with the love of the Christ within you. I hope that helps a bit, Chris.
We're losing about 35 to 50,000 species every year. This is just unacceptable, and we're not gonna have much of a planet left in 100 years. And
well, in 1,000,000 years, there's not going to be any Earth left. Probably the whole Earth will be sucked into a black hole. And where will we be then? We will still be around. We will still be conscious beings, and the Earth and all of its pollution will have ascended or dissolved into light, or whatever you want to call it, will be in a different frequency. Well, the point is, you're not going to free the whole world of suffering by yourself, or even if all the spiritual teachers worked on it together, they would not eradicate it. But you can eradicate your own suffering. That is one person on the earth who can be free of suffering that is up to you. And I think that's what all of us need to look at. The suffering of all of us amplifies it. I wake up in the morning sometimes and I feel the suffering of humanity. So rather than join in and, you know, turn on the news and work myself up into a state of more suffering, I can say, I'm not going to give in to that. I'm going to generate goodness today. I'm going to send out love to humanity. At least I'm going to do some chanting in Sanskrit or some prayers or whatever, you know, to at least in my own world, my own environment, I can eliminate suffering and generate goodness. And I think all of us have that opportunity. You know, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi did an experiment where he sent people to Washington, D.C. They rented a hotel, and I think it went on for a month, where they meditated, I don't know, hours a day. And during that month, the crime rate dropped. I mean, they had the statistics for it, and other people have done that. Also, praying for people in a hospital, even those people didn't know they were being prayed for. Those people got better faster than the people that weren't prayed for. So, you know, you could go sit outside a hospital and pray for people and know that you're doing some good. Plus, it would make you feel good. You know, you don't even have to go to the hospital. You can think of the hospital. Like, you know, last night I heard of a friend who was taken to the hospital. I didn't drive there. It's a 40-minute drive. I sat here and sent prayers out to him, and I know it's helping him. So
I'm intrigued by this picture of the I am presence that's behind you. And you talked about the Christ self halfway between God and humans, and the human experiment with one's ability to create. And so I, for some reason, started to think about the Apostles' Creed and that notion of Jesus as true God and true man. And I wonder if in their explanation of trying to wrap their minds around who this being was, they were in fact pointing us to that Christ self. That's the connection.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think, you feel some frustration on Jesus's part where the disciples, when are you going to introduce us to the Father? He said, you don't get it. The Father is here within you. Here's a different portrait of the I am presence. I don't know if that ring light is in there, but here it shows a lower figure as well. This is by Marius Michael George. He has a website, mariusfineart.com. And there's another one, actually has a woman. It's a woman standing actually in a gown, and you see the presence above her. Oh, there, Annika is holding it up. You can see the picture where the woman is the lower figure.
Oh, then, beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, and I have to say, I don't know if I mentioned it last time, but I actually saw the I am presence on 2 different occasions. And it was the most powerful experience of my life, without a doubt. I was awakened during the night, and there was that ball of light above me. And I said, "Who are you?" And it said, "I am you. I am your own God presence." And I passed out at that point. So it's not just an artist's idea of the higher self. It's actually, there is a ball of light in a higher frequency. And I think this is what babies see sometimes. 2-month-old baby lying on the bed, you lean over them and they're not looking at your face. They're looking up above. And they're making, cooing sounds. They're seeing something. What is that? I think they're seeing, some people call it the guardian angel,
Yeah, we have new babies in the house, and I have absolutely seen that. And they get this blissful look, and they're clearly not looking at me. And it's somewhere above my head.
Right.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Now, Jesus said you must become as a little child to enter the kingdom of heaven, So
yeah, they can clearly still see things. Yeah.
Pleasure. So thank you.